Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining our webinar, Future Success with Agile, DevOps and ITIL Integration. My name is Michelle and I am part of the marketing team here at DDLS, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly run through some housekeeping. This webinar is in listen mode only and will be recorded and distributed to all attendees later this afternoon. There will be a Q&A session at the very end. If you have any questions, please type them into the question box on the control panel and we'll do our best to address them all. Today, I am pleased to be joined by Rose Dyson, our ITIL and DevOps lead instructor. I'd now like to hand it over to Rose.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Just to start with some technical checks, can you please make sure that it's being broadcasted and recorded?
Yep, all good, Rose.
Excellent, thanks so much. Delivering so many sessions over Zoom lately, sometimes those little technical issues happen to us. Thanks so much, everybody. Good to see you all there. To let you know that in spite of doing presentations as a core part of my job, I still get a little bit tense when I present. Okay, so today I'm going to present you a real life scenario. This scenario has been put together by a couple of professionals and is very common to a number of organizations. So what I would like to ask you is that I'm going to present you this scenario. And while I do so, I suggest that you make your notes in relation to what you hear about the scenario itself. You may find that some of those issues or characteristics are similar in your situation as well. So then towards the second part of the presentation, I will go through some of those items with you and present how ITIL, Agile, and DevOps can actually assist on that. The intent of the presentation is to show how those three models actually work together, not in competition with each other. So let's see if we agree on that or not. Please be absolutely aware that there is actually a PDF to go together with this presentation. The PDF has much more information than I'm going to be able to present on the 40 minutes for the presentation. All right, let's get started. Okay. All right, so this scenario actually took place in May last year. Imagine this, I'm actually the IT service manager for Apex Industries. They are a very successful product development and manufacturing organization. I look after the shared enterprise IT services, such as HR, finance, and research services, IT services. All right, I was not actually the service manager. You have to imagine the scenario, okay? All right. So, Apex is a successful manufacturing product development and manufacturing business. They have been growing very, very quickly. In the last 12 months or the past year, the number of employees has doubled. And you can imagine that the HR application is critical to the business because of this sudden growth, especially considering the diverse nature of our workforce. In June 2019, we had a hard deadline from our Australian taxation office to comply with specific requirements in relation to payroll. I'm very aware that some of you attending this presentation are not in Australia, so just keep in mind, whenever I refer to the ATO, I'm actually referring to the Australian taxation office. Thanks so much for attending anyway. All right, so our internal application team supports, maintains, and further develop our applications, our enterprise applications. They work very well together using Agile and Scrum, as well as DevOps practices. We also have our internal IT operations team. They run our data center. They have also work very well together. They do a great job. Our data center is very reliable. That team, they basically use ITIL version 3 and Prince 2 whenever needed as well. We are slowly integrating or migrating our infrastructure to the cloud. However, this is a long-term project. However, communication and collaboration between the two teams could be better. Especially now, when under so much pressure due to the growth. Sometimes the collaboration and communication between the technical team and the development team is not the best. So in April last year, the application team actually lost the product owner who resigned. So the product owner was then quickly replaced by an internal project manager who was very experienced with Prince 2, but not very familiar with Agile and Scrum practices. So he's still trying to find his way around the team and integrate himself in the workflow and the mindset. However, he tends to favor the requests from the business for new features and so on. And it kind of prioritizes that over recommendations coming from the application team itself. The application team has been under enormous amount of pressure lately to keep up with the demands for the ATO requirements, for the business requirements as well for new features, the deadlines for that as well. And all these continue maintaining and further developing the application and fixing the number of identified issues as well. So as you can imagine, all this is high priority, right? So the team ends up doing everything in a hurry, and they need help. They recognize they need help. The previous product owner actually put a business case to get 2 contractors, at least as a short-term help. One as a technical lead and one as a test lead, because the application team recognizes weakness in those 2 areas. But the business case was consistently refused because that was considered to be a long-term project thing, and the budget did not allow for that. So the new product owner started sort of downgrading the priority of almost all maintenance work, so the team could focus on much needed new features and fixing bugs. The increased demand and hard deadlines has created friction between IT and the business. The communication has never been the best, but now it's actually worse. Oh well, of course that Murphy's Law kicks in. So the week before the ATO hard deadline, the HR application froze up. Nobody could do anything on the application. The HR manager was getting lots of phone calls and quickly checked our online IT service dashboard to see if there was any incident notification there about the HR application, but there was nothing. So we had no idea that the application was struggling. The HR manager called the service desk for urgent help, but the best the service desk could do was to log a priority 1 incident and immediately assign that to the application team. The HR manager was not impressed, and even worse, when told that it would take about 30 minutes before anyone from the application team could actually get back to them. The HR manager called May, the service manager, of course, and I calmly explained that we understand the situation is critical, but we are doing the very best we can with already very stretched resources. I very carefully reminded the HR manager that in our review meeting 3 years prior, I flagged that this situation could actually happen. And they insisted that the current incident response time was suitable. But this was to avoid, but they had that kind of excuse because they didn't want to spend money upgrading or employing anyone, especially considering that we were so close to the end of the budget cycle at the end of financial year. We have amazing people in our organization and in our IT teams, Dev and Ops, doing the very best they can to provide fantastic service. And they were working very hard to restore this specific incident as quick as possible. But we all need to be realistic and manage our expectations. In the meantime, Paul, who is a senior member of the applications team, checked the application and confirmed that the application was fine. Then he tracked the issue to other components of the application. And the application has cloud components and data center on-premise components as well. So he was actually able to track the issue to one of our internal databases. The database was struggling, and this is what was causing the application to freeze up. So Paul contacted the HR manager, and this was within about 20 minutes since that initial call to the service desk, and asked him a couple of questions. Then they realized that the HR team was running some very inefficient end-of-year reports at the same time that they are doing some massive updates of records on the HR application. So this kind of caused the database to slow down and the application to choke. Nobody had predicted this problem. The HR manager was less than impressed that the application team had not tested the application for this specific situation and had not built any kind of protection for this. Obviously, they needed to reprioritize some of the preventative work that the application team had already recommended, but it was ignored. So the new features and bug fixing was a higher priority. So Paul worked with the database subject matter expert to unlock the database. And after 2 hours from the initial call to the service desk, the application was working again. Guess what? Surprisingly enough, was still within the agreed SLA or the current SLA. So Paul suggested to the HR team to postpone that inefficient report to be running after hours and to review those reports to make them more efficient. So this problem could be avoided until the application team had time to actually fix the problem. This would probably be in a month or 2, or maybe 3, whenever they had the chance to run the next maintenance sprint. All right. Once the situation was under control, I organized a post-incident review with the application product owner, Paul, the senior member of the applications team, our IT operations manager, and our incident manager as well. So far, I hope you made notes of some of the issues that you heard me mentioning to you. Some of them are probably you're familiar with as well. They are very common issues that are happening in a lot of business in different industries around our markets and so on. Okay, so I'm gonna now share with you the list of items that we came up with, or the list of issues I came up with. And then I'm gonna present to you how I and the team that put this scenario together could verify or confirm or position how and if ITIL, Agile, and DevOps can actually work together on this and help this situation. All right, so let's have a look. And if I forgot any issue, can you please put on the chat, and Michelle is going to tell me that later. And remember, if you have questions, put on the chat as well, and Michelle is going to share that at the end of the presentation as well. All right, so hopefully you hang around after the presentation so we can have a quick discussion. Otherwise, contact me, and I'm more than happy to talk to you about these things. All right, so let's have a look. So we identified a number of enterprise architectural issues. So here we have a list, and remember that on the PDF that goes together with this presentation, we have that list and the relationship of this list and the proposed solutions using those 3 different models. So from the architectural point of view, we see that there is a weakness on the relationship between IT and the business. IT is not ready for the fast increase for the IT service demand. So we are left behind, not included on the communications and the discussions. So there is an obvious lack of planning and design for appropriate upgrades. Poor release planning. Consequently, there is conflicting prioritization of work and different conflicting interests as well. There is a lack of capacity planning as well in a holistic way, architectural way, from end to end, integrated. And there is obviously poor planning altogether, all over the place. Bimodal, we are obviously running a bimodal leadership style here. We have Agile and we have Command and Control with ITIL and Prince2. So those 2 different mindsets seems to be conflicting and creating confusion as well. So we have silos, we have poor communication, and we have selective collaboration. I actually discovered that Paul and the DBA play soccer together. And that is how Paul was able to collaborate with him very, very quickly. So the applications team dynamics was disturbed by the resignation of the product owner. That caused loss of the cadence as well. There is a lack of education about the 2 different mindsets, Agile and Command and Control. And this is causing confusion among the staff and lack of integrated objectives. So I don't refer anymore to aligned objectives. I look into the cascaded objectives as highlighted in Item 4. So we need to look into total integration, budget integration, as well as integrated objectives. So there is a general disrespect for the team expertise, technical as well as operational, as well as development. The traditional budget cycle is proven to be inadequate based on a calendar rather than the agile needs of the services. There is waste and value leakage in several different places in the scenario. Calls to the HR manager and the call to the service desk was confusing and extremely wasteful, creating delays. Lack of holistic thinking and proactivity, that's very obvious. There is lack of monitoring from end to end. The inadequate response to a P1 and the bad SLA shows the lack of common vision and holistic thinking. That includes the budget. And then we also have the inefficient reports illustrating inadequate capacity as well. There's lack of testing and monitoring governance. And clear illustration of disrespect for team expertise. That comes across in several aspects. But it's not all bad. There are some very positive seeds in that scenario. The great work done by Paul, the quick collaboration with the operations team, and his knowledge of the application and related components. And overall, Dev and Ops, they work very well together between themselves. So, together, we had to identify improvement initiatives that we needed to put in place as soon as possible to address these specific issues. We need to work in iterations and identify issues and improve and keep working on that, keeping the momentum going. We decided to leverage from the practices that we have already been using quite successfully in each of those teams. We have the Agile practices, we have ITIL processes and practices, as well as guiding principles, and we have the DevOps mindset. This is beside the cloud infrastructure. So, Agile, what is it? Agile is a manifesto. It's a mindset. It's a way of thinking based on 12 principles for agility and value creation. What is that? Isn't Agile just software development methodologies? Is Agile enough to address our issues and enable improvement across all levels of our organization, including Ops? Or has Ops been left behind? ITIL is a framework bringing IT and the business together to deliver end-to-end products and services to facilitate outcomes in a holistic way. But isn't ITIL just an IT operations methodology? Is ITIL enough to address our issues and enable improvement across the whole organization? ITIL 4 is integrated with high-velocity models, such as Agile and DevOps as well, to provide governance as well as agility and reliability. DevOps, I love DevOps. DevOps is a cultural movement based on human and technical interactions to improve relationship and results. But isn't DevOps about automation, software development, and cloud? Is DevOps enough to address our issues and enable improvement at all levels of the organization? Isn't DevOps replacing ITIL? After long discussions and further education, we confirmed that one model is not replacing another. They are complementing each other. Each group is using the preferred model and tools, and they work well with those. The development team works very well with Scrum, Agile development practices, and DevOps automation using cloud solutions. The IT operations team works well with ITIL version 3 processes. ITIL 4 has made this task much easier as it provides guidance to integrate the strength of each of these models while giving us direction through governance. ITIL 4 value chain in the core of the modeling operating model can actually allow any model to work, anything. The three models have the combination of culture, direction, and execution, therefore fostering collaboration, visibility, and reflection for improvement. So, we divide the improvement into three areas: strategy, growth, and execution. From a strategic point of view, that's when we start sort of placing Agile, ITIL, and DevOps strengths, identifying the gaps, and getting the three to supplement each other. As I said, here on the PDF, I go more specific and address each issue with those three models. So, from a strategic point of view, we need to build the culture to support the ongoing success of this organization. And for effective communication, collaboration, learning, respect, and trust across the whole organization. not just business, not just dev, not just ops. We need to have integrated goals across the whole organization, not just aligning reports, but integrate our objectives and our goals. This needs to be well communicated at all levels, promoting holistic thinking, align priorities. The three models support that culture of collaboration and integrated objectives. We need to coach everyone in the organization about the agile culture and how to embrace the new ways of working. Leadership is vital. Agile and ITIL can help us to agree on suitable release roadmap, visible to everyone, to support appropriate prioritization of work, release practices and processes. The ITIL service value system gives us guidance through governance, strategic thinking, holistic architecture, and risk consideration with change enablement. From fast growth point of view, Agile, ITIL, and DevOps agree on negotiate a more flexible budget that suits the agility, not the calendar. Agile, ITIL, and DevOps promote learning and education. We need to make sure that everyone is trained on whatever they need to know so they can be productive. Consider immersion and hackathon activities as well to make it more fun and engaging. All project managers, they must need to learn more about Scrum and Agile PM. And then choose which model to use, which skills to apply. They also agree that we also need to agree on a release roadmap for prioritization and make that visible by everyone. Agile workshops can help with the business to include IT and product owners on relevant discussions. DevOps adopts more lean mindset to optimize and automate whenever possible. Agile service management is very underestimated. It can definitely help to transition ITIL version 3 processes into a more agile mindset. From ITIL, we need to mature our practices and processes. For example, demand management to help understand the fast changing demands on the services. Capacity management to create a more holistic architecture and capacity needs for the services, including human capacity to cope with the increased workload, not just in ops, but in dev as well. Availability management, deliver a service that is actually fit for use to cater for the increased demand for services and performance. Look for ways to shorten incident resolution with better collaboration. Identify possible optimization on the service desk to make sure that they are more efficient. Improve failure detection through monitoring and automatic alerting, not just for the on-premises, but integrated with cloud as well. Make sure that security is updated as well. Otherwise, those are going to be a problem for us as well. Service level management. Agree on suitable level service level objectives, not just an SLA, but SLOs as well. Remove any clutter to give everybody more time to deliver customer delight. Change enablement. Standardize as many changes as possible. Automate if you can. Encourage more peer review. This will help to change quicker and safer and reduce incidents. Enable change control with DevOps automation as well. Embed that change control. Embed acceptance criteria in the definition of done within each Scrum team. From a continual improvement point of view, everybody is responsible for improvement, but we need to make sure that accountability is given for improvement initiatives as well. Now, we need to organize dev and ops to work together better and have the same mindset. Anti-waste mindset and a lean mindset. Always find a better way, a more efficient way of doing something. Welcome changes. Change is a fact of life. Agility, resilience, and reliability, not just availability. DevOps helps us to integrate dev and ops systems for better communication and more knowledge creation and be more fluid as well. ChatOps, to amplify communication between dev and ops, to shorten incident resolution. We need more maturity on testing as well, from end to end. ITIL, integrated dev and ops configuration with increased visibility, accuracy, and completeness of that information for both teams. Improved integrated monitoring as well. Automated monitoring, but with alerts to software as well as hardware teams and the components. Dev and ops proactively look at potential problems to increase the stability of applications, learn from mistakes. Maybe we can even look at SRE, the site reliability engineering. Integrated knowledge systems for problem and incident. Backlog and schedule changes aligned with release roadmap and agreed prioritizations. Better awareness of validation, acceptance, and testing in the backlogs as well. Dev and ops have task prioritization aligned with that roadmap. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. We have a lot of good stuff happening. But in conclusion, we cannot succeed alone. All three models agree in several aspects. They're not competing, they're complementing each other. So let's stop that fight. Human beings cannot put our judgment, our personal judgment on those models. We need to educate ourselves on those models. If I am DevOps, I have to learn about ITIL. If I'm Agile, I need to learn about ITIL and DevOps, and vice versa. We need to find where the gaps are on those models and close the gaps with the knowledge we already have from those models as well, and implement new models whenever appropriate. We cannot allow inertia. We must always look for better ways of doing what we can do. With integrated objectives, not just aligned objectives and good reporting. We need to deliver customer excellence, using whatever model we can use to help us to get there. What do you think? Can Agile, DevOps, and ITIL work together where they're competing? Is that us making that confusion? I know this may look like utopia to some of us. However, there are actually a number of organizations in the world succeeding on doing this. But we cannot do this alone. The whole organization will eventually have to be on board. Budget, business communication, dev, ops, if this is to work together. Education is essential to learn, for learning and innovation and maturity. After all, we always start with the common vision and then figure out how we're gonna get there. So I'm very passionate about this because I see it working, but education is important. I hope this helps you. And so please make absolutely sure that you get the PDF for this presentation. That is not gonna end your questions, that's just gonna start it. Hopefully this is gonna open Pandora's boxes. It's gonna open communication, it's gonna open honest conversation between IT dev, ops, and the business as well. I hate to say this. I was saying this even before the beginning of this year, but we are all on this together. And I have to say that COVID has actually made that more evident to all of us. We have to embrace the new ways of working. We need to embrace digital solutions. We can't do that without a certain amount of maturity and governance. So that's all from me. I'm going to pass it back to Michelle. And she's going to tell me if there are any questions or discussions that we need to have. Go for it, Michelle.
Thanks, Rose. That was a wonderful session. Now, I just want to ask if anyone hasn't submitted their questions, you can do so via the control box now, and Rose will be more than happy to answer your questions. So I'll just check the question box. Let's have a look. Okay, I've got a question here. How can I get the PDF? So all attendees today will receive an email with the presentation, the recording, and the PDF that Rose has been referring to. Do we have any more questions?
All right. No more questions there? If there are no questions, that's great. But also, I want to make absolutely sure that this starts a discussion. We have to talk about this stuff internally as well as with each other. We have different organizations that brings us together for those discussions. We have meetups, we have all kinds of things and channels available to us. So I can see that there are a couple of questions coming through, Michelle.
Yep, so let me just go through it. Okay, I've got a question here. On making more standard changes, would changes resulting to service disruption can be made into standard changes? Okay.
You may agree or disagree with me that people are going to change things with or without our us seeing it. So by standardizing as many changes as possible, we at least increase visibility of those changes. So with that, we can learn as well. And also, standardization of changes can be so optimized that we can actually embed that in our automations, as DevOps does. So I think that by increasing visibility, we reduce the risk of those changes when they are implemented. So I hope that helps.
Thanks, Rose. We've got another question here. Do you still see a place for traditional waterfall delivery in some cases? And, how do you see these cases complementing ITIL and DevOps?
Absolutely. We do that naturally. You can observe that waterfall exists naturally as well. So it is possible, but it's not easy, not at all. So we have in the Agile, for example, we have another model called SAFE, S-A-F-E, the Scalable Agile for a framework for enterprise. Scalable, because it gives that waterfall kind of sense to Agile itself. Yes, it does work, but education is vital. We need to know both. And like any skills that I have, they're transferable for different situations. So I think that's where it comes to it. We need to know when to apply waterfall and when to be agile. The other thing is also when to be agile and when to be command and control. Apply control where control is needed. So don't be, no, I'm just this, no, I'm just that. We are a combination of things. It's like making a curry. You cannot use too much of this or too much of that. The curry is not going to taste good. Okay? So we need to know how much to use of what. So the answer, yes, it does work, but it's not easy.
Thanks, Rose. We have another question here. Can you provide an example of SLAs versus SLOs?
Yes. When I teach ITIL Foundation, I make absolutely sure I explain what an SLA is. Whenever we talk about an SLA, we're actually referring to one KPI or one metric in that document, in that agreement. We are actually referring to the mean time to restore. There are other indicators and other metrics on an SLA. There are other things on an SLA as well. Saying that the SLA is 3 hours or 3 days is like saying that if I rent an apartment, I'm saying that my lease agreement is $400 a week. There is much more to it, right? So there is much more to an SLA than just the mean time to restore. Now, the SLA, whatever we have, the metrics we have to manage the service itself, is made out of individual objectives in the different areas that makes up the service. So that is the major difference between an SLA from a service perspective and an SLO from underpinning, enabling capability point of view. SRE, Site Reliability Engineering, uses SLOs quite well. It creates like a budget for mistakes, a budget for errors, a budget for those objectives as well. Works pretty well. I encourage you to look into SRE as well, Site Reliability Engineering. So hopefully that answered your question.
Thanks, Rose. Got another question here. You talked about doing some adjustments on budgeting as well. Would you mind exploring what changes are recommended when budgeting?
Okay. This is something when Agile can really help, because Agile usually works more on the business side of things, right? Finance has to come on board as well. So, for example, if we are using Agile on the business, and whatever that means, right? And we are using Scrum on the in DevOps or whatever, in the creation of features. And if anything goes wrong there, for example, in this scenario, we have testing. Testing has to be improved. We need to automate testing. We need to create better testing cases, but we don't have a test lead. So we kind of test what? We're blind in relation to testing. We need to bring someone in, but we couldn't because we were close to the end of the financial year, and we couldn't because that was a certain category of expenditure that did not fit in with the budget itself. So in that case, we need to get a more agile budget. We need to get the budget not to suit the calendar, a 12-month budget. We need to get the budget per feature, per project, per exercise, per sprint, per cycle, and so on. If we use Agile Service Management, we do break that down into phases as well. So we can get a budget for that as well. The budget is not just for rolling out a new tool or something like that. It needs to be for improvement of those tools, maturity of processes as well. So then you have to cater the budget for that. So ITIL says that service management is a set of organizational capabilities, organizational functions, including finance. That is an ITIL on the financial side, financial management and stuff like that, strategy and so on. Okay, so we need to look at, is the budget enabling us, or we have to submit and hold us back because of the budget? I hope that helps.
Thanks, Rose. Now, we don't have any more questions come through. I'll give it a few more seconds in case someone has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got another one here. You mentioned that the priorities and goals of dev, infra, and etc. should be aligned so that Agile, DevOps, and ITIL can work together. Mm-hmm. Do you have any pointers on how to initiate and collaborate on this front?
Yes, that's when ITIL helps. So I think we're getting to a point now that a lot of organizations, they forbidden the word ITIL. So don't talk about ITIL, don't use the word, don't mention it, right? But by doing so, I have to get this right. And yeah, so I have to get this right. They actually threw the baby away with the bathing water. So I hope I said that right. Okay, so ITIL helps us with that because there are some gaps on Agile, and there are some, DevOps is not strong on this, but ITIL is. So ITIL actually on the financial management side of things. Sorry, can I see the question again? All right, so from the service management point of view, we have the holistic end-to-end service aspect of things. So you need to be educated in ITIL to understand what I'm talking about. So it's holistic from end to end. Okay, so we look after outcomes. We look after value throughout that chain, holistic chain from end to end there. If it's not there, ITIL has mechanisms to start the conversation. For example, service level management. Oh, we are not delivering what we need. The customer is upset. We are getting complaints. We're missing deadlines. We are getting penalties, or incidents are increasing, and so on. So then that triggers a conversation to start sort of figuring out how we're going to address this. Where is the problem? Which brings me to another point. I encourage you, if you don't have problem management in ITIL implemented yet, can you please look into implementing it? Can you prioritize that? At very, very least, start sort of identifying the problem management skills that you have, because you need to use those problem management skills on the service ability or inability to deliver excellence. That is going to help us to identify where the problem is. Why is that behaving that way? And it start the conversation and trigger the conversation. The solution is not just hardware. We're absolutely convinced of that because we have spent hundreds of thousands in technology and we still have the same problems. So we need to look into other areas: collaboration, mindset, behavior, belief of the individual, work on the people CI. So ITIL is the best one, the best position one. The ITIL processes and practices and guiding principles, they actually have mechanism to trigger the conversation to find where we need to improve what from a collaboration point of view. I hope that helped. Sorry, one more thing there. One sign of that ITIL identifies is, for example, we have a service management tool and we have a different tool in the ops or agile. We have multiple duplication of tools, and that works against collaboration. Another process in ITIL that if you have not looked seriously about it, I recommend you to do is knowledge management. Knowledge management is not just knowledge articles. Knowledge management helps you with collaboration. Look at KCS, knowledge-centered support, for example. So all these underpins organizational change as well. So it's all linked. ITIL definitely helps with that. All right, I'm done now. Next question.
Thanks, Rose. Next question. What to consider to have balance between quality and timeliness of delivery in relation to testing and QA?
What to consider? How long is a piece of string? I'm an ITIL expert. I'm passionate about ITIL. I am now increasing my education about DevOps, and I love both. So why I'm saying that? Because in the Prince2 project management, all those that I have mentioned so far, they have that in common. They find balance between quality, time, cost, and so on. At the end of the day, they also agree on the definition of value. ITIL 4, focus on value, talks about who is the stakeholder, how they perceive value, and what is the experience. So quality is a component of value. There are places where we can compromise on quality. There are places where we can compromise on time and so on. But we need to know what that is. Typical example, change management, kill it. Change control, kill it. That's not the intention. If you deliver a change successfully, meaning that it did not create an impact and you did deliver what the change is supposed to deliver, it does what it's supposed to do, but you did that with a delay, can you say that the change succeeded? I wouldn't. So we need to be more agile. We need to be more effective and efficient on the way that we assess risk and so on. So I addressed the two sides there. One is qualify what value is in relation to time, usability, and quality, and cost. And also looking into how you actually gathering this, assessing this, and putting control systems in place, not to oppress, but to enable that sense of value to be actually delivered, so we can actually do what we do best, achieve the outcomes.
Okay, next question. How project releases should be planned in DevOps?
Ooh, I love this question. Whoever answered this, thank you so much. I love it. Anonymous. Ooh, love ya. Okay. How does okay, project release. There is a confusion. That's when the dual, waterfall and agile kind of conflicts, and ITIL with the release governance closes that gap. Okay, so it doesn't matter which one you use, ITIL brings that governance and of release governance to place. Okay, so DevOps has the CI/CD and has velocity. Okay, meaning that we DevOps deliver things very quickly, right? DevOps delivers quickly by, let's go shift left to the beginning of that agility and velocity. At the beginning of that, we have a backlog with Jira or whatever. So we have a backlog. So the backlog has to be aligned with a release, an agreed release roadmap. SAFe has that as well. SAFe has that. We have the epics, we have the themes, the features, the synchronization, the roadmap, all that there as well. So those mechanisms, they help you to get that agility and frequency and velocity of DevOps in the cloud through the backlog, proper grooming of the backlog, proper management of the backlog. Make sure that we have very good user stories, not just anybody can do a user story. Make sure you have a proper, formally educated business analyst, for example, or people have BA skills to actually understand how to put together a good user story. Proper grooming of the backlog. So all that has to be linked to the roadmap. So that at the moment is broken. The same way that in ITIL, the transition was broken as well. One symptom of that is when I see a certified Scrum Master used as a task manager. That's not what the Scrum Master should be doing. The Scrum Master should be teaching people how to groom the backlog and how to keep that in that priority aligned with the roadmap, for example. If not, how can we close that gap? How can we get people to understand that? So those are the symptoms that I say. So if I'm doing a shift left here, so the issue is not with DevOps necessarily. DevOps is responding to that early lack of synchronization and grooming and alignment with the priorities and roadmap itself. The other thing is release management in ITIL gives the governance accordingly to the roadmap when things are ready actually to be released. So that governance needs to come back. So once we threw away ITIL, we lost that. So I go to a lot of meetups and I hear developers saying that we are now a slave to the backlog. It's just a machine. And there is no ownership. There is no understanding of what they are doing. So ships left. Okay. So.
Excellent. Thanks, Rose. We don't have any more questions come through, which is perfect timing because unfortunately we're up to time, and that is the conclusion of today's session. I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning, and especially Rose for your great energy and enthusiasm. Really appreciate it. And that is it. And you guys will be receiving the PDF, the presentation and the recordings later this afternoon will be emailed to all attendees.
Can I just say, Michelle, that let's continue the conversation on the different forums that we have. At DDLS, I'm more than happy to put more webinars together. Drop us an email, and I'm more than happy to create new webinars as well. And we also have our LinkedIn and Facebook and so on to keep in touch. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful to see. I can see some familiar names there, some people from overseas. Oh my gosh, I'm so honored. So honored. Thanks so much, everybody. I hope to see you again.
Thank you. Bye, guys.